Shalom, welcome back. So we are up to chapter 8 in the Gospel according to the Hebrews by Matthew. And so we're going to go ahead and get into it in just a moment. I do want to just bring up a point of clarification, just so that we're on the same page. This book is a reconstruction of the Gospel according to the Hebrews. So what I did was I took all the references and all these quotations of Yeshua that didn't make it into the Bible that we have records of, and I incorporated what I could into the Greek Matthew. And also, I've went to Luke, and some of the language used in Luke, I've incorporated that into the Matthew version, largely based upon the research of James Edwards. He wrote a book, The Hebrew Gospel and the Development of the Synoptic Tradition. And he brought out this point that usually when we look at the quotations we have from the Gospel of the Hebrews and compare that to Luke and Matthew, the vocabulary used by Luke more closely fits the Gospel according to the Hebrews. And using his knowledge of Hebrew and Greek, the languages, he sees evidence for Luke actually being like the portion of Luke that's called Special Luke is translated from a Hebrew source. There's Hebrewisms in the language that Luke uses. And so, long story short, it appears that Matthew more closely follows the narrative of the Gospel according to the Hebrews as far as this happened first and that happened second and whatnot. But the language of Luke, the vocabulary that Luke uses, more closely fits with the Gospel according to the Hebrews. So there were times where I would take a verse from Matthew, but I would use the identical verse or the same verse from Luke and maybe use the vocabulary of Luke instead of the vocabulary of Matthew. Like, that's one of the changes I made. And I'm bringing this up because we're about to hit another one of those verses that I didn't change. And now I'm thinking maybe I should because of an issue that came up this month. And so we'll cover that in just a moment when we get to it. Starting at verse 8, or chapter 8, verse 1, when he came down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Master, if you want to, you can heal me. Yeshua stretched out his hand and touched him and said, I want to, be made clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Yeshua then said to him, Strive not to tell any man, but go show yourself to the priest, and offer as a testimony the gift as Yahweh commanded Moses in your law. So I want to pause here because this verse, this event where Yeshua cleansed the leper and sent the leper to the temple, it came up in a recent debate. And so on one side of the debate, we had Ebionites, and on the other side, there was Christian apologists. The apologists spent a great deal of time arguing that Yeshua told this leper to go make an animal sacrifice, so therefore this belief that Yeshua was against animal sacrifices is bunk. That's their argument. I do want to point out, I think we should look into this, basically, is what I'm saying, because this, like I said, this is the way it reads in Matthew, and it mentions a gift. So we have multiple references from historians in the first century who had firsthand knowledge of how the temple operated. One of these witnesses is Josephus, another one is Philo, and both of them talk about the Essenes. And as I've said before, I believe the Essenes were the group that eventually converted over to be Nazarenes. And Nazarenes and Essenes, they both existed before Yeshua. And what I think that Essene is like a umbrella term, and under that umbrella is people like the Nazarenes, the Essenes, the Edessenes, and all these various groups that became known as Jewish Christian after the appearance of Yeshua. That Essenes and Nazarenes, they're really just like the different names for essentially the same group of people. That's my belief. That's my theory. So we have the testimony that they did not offer sacrifices in the temple, but they would go and make non-animal sacrifices. Like you can go and make a grain offering, or you could offer money or whatever. And the scholars don't want to accept that, or not scholars, the apologists don't want to accept that, because what they want to do is they want to argue that the only option here is that this person went and made an animal sacrifice. If you start studying the way the temple operated in the first century, it's going to take you about 5 minutes to realize that the temple and the way it was operating in the first century was not the way it was described in the book of Leviticus. There were non-Israelite priests. There were multiple high priests. If somebody wanted to be high priest, they could just pay Herod, and Herod would put them in the temple as high priest. So you'd have 2 or 3 high priests at one time. They were essentially out doing whatever they wanted to. They, obviously they incorporated sacrifices from the pagans around them, as we've discussed before. And of course that was done back in the days that Leviticus was written. But the point is, if you have this image that everything done in the temple was perfectly preserved in the way that the book of Leviticus was written, it wasn't. It was, things were way off track even from the days of the writing of Leviticus. So if you had a group who didn't want to offer animal sacrifice, but they wanted to come in and offer something else, the temple was going to accommodate that. They're not going to turn you away. They didn't care. Like you're bringing a grain offering or something, you're like, hey, I want to give this to you. They're not going to be like, no, we're not going to accept it. They would accept it. The system was designed to accommodate these other groups. That is clear from reading sources like Philo. Like Philo would not have said that they went to the temple to make offerings, but they would not make animal sacrifices if the temple was not accepting the non-animal sacrifices. So that's the first point to make, is that the temple did accommodate the beliefs of the Essenes or the Nazarenes or whatever label you want to use. The other thing is, in the debate, they were debating not Matthew 8:4. It was actually Luke 5:14. So here's the Greek of Luke 5:14, where Yeshua says, "But having gone to the temple, show yourself to the priests and offer for the cleansing of you as commanded Moses for a testimony to them." So nowhere in this verse do you see the word for sacrifices. Nowhere. When they were quoting the verse, they were saying, offer a sacrifice, offer a sacrifice. It doesn't say offer a sacrifice. It's not in the verse. But also, this word, we'll just click on it, prospero, it means to bring an offering or to present. You can see it's used here as presenting or bringing something. It doesn't necessarily mean presenting an offering. So what they're doing is they're taking this word and using it as the meaning of presenting an offering. But what if you're presenting yourself for a cleansing? And looking at the Greek here, show yourself to the priest and present yourself for cleansing as commanded Moses for a testimony. He's sending him there for a testimony of the healing. Present yourself for cleansing. Like that, in my mind, that's just as accurate of a translation as what the Christian apologists were using. And looking at some of these down here, most of these are pretty accurate. Offer for thy cleansing, you just change that to present, and present for thy cleansing. Present yourself for the cleansing. Young's literal translation, show yourself to the priest and bring near for your cleansing. Or you could say come near, or present for the cleansing. So this does not necessarily mean sacrifices. I also went and looked at the Syriac. We have the oldest copy of the Gospels that we have is a Syriac version. And here's the language from the Syriac. And Jesus warned him that to no one should he say it, but go, show thyself to the priests, and offer for thy cleansing as Moses commanded, that it should be for them as a witness. So just change present, and present for your cleansing as Moses commanded, that it should be to them for a witness. He's not sending him there for the purpose of making a sacrifice. He's sending him there for the purpose of them being witnesses to what he did, the healing of the leper. So this whole debate that was going on, I mean, they were putting words into the text that were not there, essentially. So we go back to Matthew 8:4. Strive not to tell any man, but show yourself to the priest and offer or present yourself as a testimony, the gift. Okay, so this is, the language here at Matthew is different. It's about presenting a gift. Again, it doesn't say sacrifice, though. So I guess, at the very beginning, when I made the very first video in this process of reading the Rock of Assure Foundation, I mentioned, mentioned that there were various versions, and this is the latest version. So, I'll give you guys you guys can vote on this or comment on it. Do you think that we should use the language of Luke here, which is to present yourself to the priest for cleansing, for a testimony, or should I just stick with it the way it is, using the language of Matthew? And again, keep in mind, according to Mr. James Edwards, Luke's language tended to follow closer to the original, the Gospel of the Hebrews. So let me know in the comments what you think, because what I want to do when I finish going through and reading the entire Rock of Assure Foundation, I'd like to just go ahead and if I make any changes in the process of reading it, I will post. I'll update the current version that's on Amazon and the current version that's available for download, and just kind of make it like a final version. And that way I'm not continuously updating it. So, in the interest of making this a final version, should we change this verse 4 to fit the language that Luke uses? So, let me know in the comments. Moving on. Now, there were some present at the same time who told him about the Galileans, whose blood Pilate had mixed with the sacrifices. By the way, this is actually coming from Luke also. So if I were to incorporate that in here, it would really just be, the same thing. It's like using Luke to fill in the gaps here. Whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. Yeshua answered them, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than the other Galileans, because they suffered such things? I tell you, no, but unless you repent, you will all perish the same way. Or those 18 upon whom the tower in Siloam fell and killed them, do you think that they were worse offenders than all the men who dwell in Jerusalem? I tell you, no, but unless you repent, you will all perish the same way. When he came to Capernaum, a captain of hundreds came to him, begging, saying, Master, my son lies in the house, sick of contraction, and he is very weak with the illness. Yeshua said to him, I will come and heal him. And the captain of hundreds answered, Master, I'm not ready for you to come under my roof. Just make the decision and he will be healed. For I am a sinful man, and also the provost, the one in charge, who has under myself horses and riders, valiant men. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and I tell another, come, and he comes. And tell my servant, do this, and he does it. When Yeshua heard it, he marveled and said to those who followed him, most certainly, I tell you, I have not found such faith in Israel. I tell you that many will come from the east and the west, and shall rest with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the outer darkness of Gehenna. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Yeshua said to the captain of hundreds, go your way. As you have believed, it will be done for you. His young boy was healed in that same hour. When Yeshua came to Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laying sick in a continual burning fever. He touched her hand, and the burning fever left her. So she got up and served them. When evening came, they brought to him many possessed with demons, and by his word alone he cast out the spirits for them, and healed every sickness, that it might be established which was spoken through Isaiah the prophet, saying, surely our sicknesses he bore, and our pains he suffered. Now when Yeshua saw great multitudes around him, he gave the order to go to the other side of the sea. And there came a sage and said to him, Rabbi, I will follow you wherever you go. Yeshua said to him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no floor where to lay his head. Another of his disciples said to him, Master, allow me first to go and bury my father. But Yeshua said to him, follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead. When he got into a boat, his disciples followed him. Behold, a violent storm came up on the sea, so much that the waves were coming into the boat, and the boat was thought to be breaking up. But he himself was asleep. The disciples came to him and begged him, saying, save us, Master, lest otherwise we die. He said to them, why are you fearful, O you little of faith? He got up and rebuked the wind and the sea, and immediately the large waves became calm. When the men who were there saw this, they marveled, saying, who is he, this one that even the wind and the sea obey him? When he crossed over to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gergesites, 2 people possessed by demons met him there, coming out of the tombs exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. Behold, they cried out, saying, what do we have to do with you, Yeshua, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the set time? And Yeshua said to them, come out from there, evil host. Now there was nearby them a herd of many pigs feeding. The demons asked him, saying, if you cast us out, grant us authority to go to the herd of pigs. And he said to them, go. They came out and went into the herd of pigs, and behold, the whole herd of pigs rushed down with a great commotion, and slipped off the cliff into the sea, and died in the sea. Those who fed them were afraid, and fled, and went away into the city, and told everything, including what happened to those who were possessed with demons. Behold, the city came out to meet Yeshua. When they saw him, they begged him that he would not pass into their borders. And so that is the end of chapter 8. Maybe since I took y'all on such a long tangent earlier, I'm going to go ahead and just end this video after one chapter, and we'll come back on chapter 9. That way it breaks it up a little bit better. So let me know what you think about verse 4. Should we go with the way Luke words that verse, which that's really kind of what I'm tempted to do at this point, because I believe it's more accurate. But you guys can vote on that, right? And we'll see what the comments say. And also, I'll put a link in the description for that debate. It's a really long debate. I think it's like 5 hours long. It was arguing for the Ebionite side was Cameron Waters and Aaron Abke. And so I'll post that, and you guys can watch it if you want to. They did do a response video to it, so maybe that would be a better one to watch. I'm not sure, but I'll put the original debate link in the description. So thank you for listening, and we'll pick it up next time. Let me know what you think about verse 4. And while you're at it, you can go ahead and click the like on this video too. Shalom.